place in family, friends, or in society, that communication, if there is a breakdown, things don't go so well. And respecting in relationship is a really good to take that feedback that everyone is entitled to an opinion, and take that opinion on board and come up with solutions together. Next one. So ways to build respect in a relationship. So good relationships at work improve happiness, trust and engagement in the workplace. So demonstrating trust. Trust is essential in all relationships. So feeling trust isn't as nearly as powerful as showing trust. So people should be aware that you trust in their ideas or their instincts or their work that they're doing. So, and that's also comes back to communication, so letting people know that you think that they're doing a good job. So gratitude, which we talked about in the last session, saying thank you for things. Being mindful of how you communicate. So communication is one of the most important parts of a relationship and one of the hardest. So don't expect work colleagues to be mind readers. If you're upset, it's important to talk openly about what's bothering you. So like we said, maybe review the communication methods, so maybe not jumping on the email, maybe taking overnight to think about what you're going to say to the person. But it is really important to communicate if there is an issue with someone else, not to stew on it, because then it will make going to work an uncomfortable experience. Be reliable and accountable. So when you make plans, appointments and promises, make sure that you're following through. And being dependable, respect other people's time and emotional energy. So depending on your position in the workplace, whether you've got staff under you that you work alongside with, if someone's made an appointment with you, making sure that you're prompt to that appointment, that you're not cancelling a lot of the time, because people will put aside time to spend with you, so making sure that you're respecting that with them, and being respectful of other people that you work with. We also need to appreciate your differences, so don't criticise others for their ideas. You can disagree with someone and still respect their opinion, and part of what makes relationships awesome is the difference. So society, everyone is different, no two people are the same. That's what makes it interesting, and there are so many ideas that there is never one right idea, but collectively we can make a great idea together. So get to know yourself. Knowing boundaries makes it a lot easier to know when these boundaries have been crossed. What are your core values and qualities that complement your own? And knowing yourself helps communicate better. So knowing what works for you will help you to communicate that to other people so that they can work a lot easier with you. Showing respect comes down to listening with open communication. So in a nutshell, that's what I took away from building respect in a relationship, is to listening and being able to communicate with other people. Is there any other questions in regards to that? No. Who has an idea? How could we demonstrate trust in the workplace? Has anyone got an example, an idea, a thought?
What are you looking at me for?
David, you got anything?
You give someone a job to do and see how they do it, and then see if they do it the way you want it to be done.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
Or if not, building onto that, if not, just say, like, just make sure you do it properly, and I want to do it this way, and like not your way or something like that, or like just give them an example how the employee wants to do it, and then just follow on what they do.
That's a good idea. So giving them a solution. So not just saying that you did a bad job, but saying you did a job, but next time could you maybe do it like this, giving them a solution.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good idea for building trust, isn't it? Anyone else? Yeah.
It's a bit similar to what he's saying, is that what if you get somebody to do a job and they do it different from you, but they do it well?
It's a win-win then, isn't it?
Do you assume their way of doing it?
Or you could come back with your communication and say, you did an awesome job. I was thinking I was going to do it like this, but you did it like this, so I'm
So
impressed
you
with
tell
how
them
you
they
did
did a better
it.
job.
Yeah.
A better
Why
way of
wouldn't you
doing
though?
it. Better way of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, thanks for the input. Thanks for, I didn't think of that.
Mm.
It's showing them, it's empowering them though. as a work member. It's giving them that, and they would then go away and go, oh wow, that's really cool. He thinks I did a great idea. You know what I mean? Like it's
Well, it's basically the same thing as you were saying before.
yeah.
You show respect for them and they do a better job, and you
Right.
explain to them that
Because
you
next
they
time
did
they're
do a
going to want to
better
do an
job.
amazing job again.
Yeah.
They're going to keep wanting to do that. So, and there's no right and wrong. That's the biggest thing. You know, it's all an opinion. Everyone's opinion's entitled to be heard. So it's just about how we communicate it. That's it. Communicating in a culturally appropriate way. So obviously there's a lot of different nationalities that are in society these days. We're all influenced by culture. It shapes how we see the world, what we value, what we believe in, and how we communicate. So effective communication is important in any job. In theory, effective communication is a simple process. Someone sends a message, another person receives it, understands it, and perhaps sends back a response. But communication is not always simple or effective. So looking at culture. Culture is a way of identifying groups of people who share common characteristics such as language, social practices, attitudes, and values. We're all part of a culture is our language or ethnic group or community or workplace. Being aware of your own culture open to you understanding and being more sensitive to the cultures of others. So just breaking it down that in society there's lots of different groups and ideas and theories and what people believe in, what you don't believe in, but that's important to every single individual, so it's respecting their beliefs as well, and using communication in an appropriate way. Some important points. So be aware of the impact of culture. If someone avoids eye contact with you when speaking, perhaps that's the impact of culture, not that they're rude, shy or uninterested. Acknowledge it, understand it and ask about it. You'll need to learn and adjust to each other to ensure communication is effective and appropriate. So just being self-aware when you're talking to others that it might not be you, it could be someone else. With communicating with individuals, be aware of assumptions. Culture gives useful clues, but it doesn't assume all people are from a certain cultural background, share the same beliefs and ways of behaving. People are individuals and need to be treated as such. Start conversations and find out what the person values and believes. So once again, opening up the lines of communication in different cultures, because you know, you might learn something, they might be able to educate you in something, but don't always assume that one certain culture is the way that they are, because they might not be. All cultures are equal. The culture you were raised in is probably the one you feel most comfortable with. You understand the rules. This does not mean that it's the best or the only way people should behave. And a different culture does not mean a lesser one. So just being open to different ideas. And especially in the workplace in this day and age, there are so many multiculturals in all different workplaces that you have to be aware of it all. We need to speak clearly and concisely. So speaking clearly doesn't mean speaking slow, which can seem patronising. Use your natural pace, but sound words out properly. And also break down information into manageable chunks, and if required, use supplementary non-verbal information such as diagrams or drawings. So there's always ways that we can enhance our training, or in the workplace, how you know, if they don't know how to do something, we can, you know, Google's amazing these days. We can find anything. Check for understanding. So if you're having difficulty understanding a message, ask the person to repeat it or clarify it. There's nothing worse than assuming they understood it or they, you know, you're not sure, so making sure that you're clarifying it. Similarly, if you don't think your message has been understood, check for understanding. And be aware of non-verbal communications. So up to 2/3 of the meaning of a message can come from non-verbal communication, such as facial expressions, gestures, posture, tone of voice. Always be sensitive to non-verbal communication and how it's interpreted by other cultures. So just being as yourself aware of how you're portraying or communicating in the workplace. Issues in the workplace. So some common workplace issues that employees face may include interpersonal conflict, communication problems, gossip, bullying, harassment, discrimination, low motivation and job satisfaction, performance issues, or a poor job fit. So you may have some or none of these when you go into employment in the workplace. So it's, we're going to talk about how we overcome these in the workplace. The workplace is typically an environment in which people with different personalities, communication styles and worldviews interact. So these differences are one potential source of workplace issues and can ultimately lead to stress and tension for those involved. Workplace issues can lead to decreased performance and productivity, loss of job or termination, decreased satisfactory happiness, stress and a wide variety of mental health issues. So we talked about in the earlier session, building great relationships builds motivation within your workplace. On the flip side, issues in the workplace can result in, no motivation, decreased performance. Approaching workplace issues in terms of intended outcomes and solutions rather than as problems improve both psychological safety and organisational success. Prepare for the conversation by objectively reviewing the situation. So problem solving is important to both individuals and organisations because it enables us to exert control over our environment. So problem solving gives us a mechanism for identifying these things, figuring out why they are broken and determining a course of action to fix them. A lot of workplace issues occur because communication has broken down. So it's a common theme over our course today is communication and problem solving. So coming up with a solution, just don't go in with negative feedback, but actually coming up with here's the problem, here's what we're going to do about it, and using communication as our tool to identify and work through that together. Types of conflict in the workplace and how to handle them. We're going to watch a video.
There are many types of conflict in the workplace that you will need to deal with, but by far the most frequent and most challenging are personality conflicts. However, there are 4 other ways conflicts arise at work that are worthy of mentioning before we take a more in-depth look at one of the ways you can minimise the negative impact of personality clashes. The first one is interdependence conflicts. These types of conflicts happen when a person relies on someone else's cooperation, output, or input for them to get their job done. For example, a salesperson is always late in putting the monthly sales figures. This causes the accountant to be late with her reports. Interdependence conflicts can be overcome by ensuring that 1, people have a good handle on delegation skills, and yes, you can delegate across, up, and not just down. Secondly, that people are well trained in how to have challenging conversations. And third, that consequences, natural and imposed, are used. For example, the salesperson who is late with his or her input could have a bonus reduction, which is an imposed consequence. Use the link below to take the delegation quiz to test your capability at delegating. Then, if you find you need to fine-tune your skills in this area, access to how to delegate so you get it done well and done on time programmed. Delegation is one of the skills that all high-performance rockstar leaders master. The second type of conflict that we can look at is differences in styles. Conflict often happens because people have differing preferences on how to get things done. For example, one person may want to get the work done quickly, that is a task-oriented type person, and get on to the next thing as fast as possible, while another person is more concerned about making sure that everyone has a say in how the work gets done. You're a more people-oriented person. You can hose down a lot of potential conflicts when you're trained in how to understand and successfully navigate your way through style differences. And make no mistake, style differences generally lead to personality conflicts. In fact, here's an example of a style conflict that was fast looking like a personality conflict. I was recently coaching a client who was complaining about a colleague who'd taken 5 minutes to run his eyes over her report that she'd spent way more than 20 hours compiling. And then he immediately started pointing out to her the things that she hadn't got quite right. Boy, was she angry. She said to me, how dare he glance over it for 5 minutes and then provide an opinion on it. He hardly has enough background to make such broad sweeping judgment. He's impossible. I'm going to have to tell my boss that I just cannot work with him. After hearing this, I reminded her of the DISC webinar she'd recently attended with me, and she got it straight away that this was a style conflict. Her preferred style, which is steadiness, is to take time to think things through before making a well-considered comment and or decision, whereas his preferred style, which is dominating, means he makes fast decisions and offers opinions freely. Once we'd taken it back to differences in style, she saw a way to discuss with him his responses to her work, but more importantly, how they could use each other's styles to work more effectively together. So the third type of conflict in the workplace that I want to talk about is differences in background and gender. Conflicts can arise between people because of differences in age, educational backgrounds, personal experiences, ethnic heritage, gender, and political preferences. In the link below is an interview I did with Barbara Annis on gender diversity and inclusiveness. There are some great tips in the interview to help you make the most of gender differences. Fourth type of conflict that we often see before we get into the personality clashes is differences in leadership style. Now, leaders have different ways of leading their teams, and team members who have to deal with various leaders throughout a day can become confused and irritated by these different ways of being led. For example, one leader may be more open and inclusive, while another may be more reactive. To avoid this type of disruption, make sure that your leadership team puts together a robust set of principles and values. Then most importantly, they use them to provide consistency in how they make decisions and involve people in the business. Okay, so let's turn our attention to personality clashes. These personality clashes are often the biggest cause of conflict in the workplace. They're often ignited by emotions and perceptions about somebody else's motives and character. For example, a team leader jumps on someone for being late because she views the team member as being lazy and disrespectful, whereas the team member sees the team leader as out to get him because he isn't one of the favoured children. I put that in inverted quotes. So how do you handle personality clashes? Well, here is possibly one of the most essential principles to follow. If you want to resolve any personality conflict successfully, you must identify the story you've got going on. Now, in total, there are 7 principles that we teach in the Successful Feedback Program to help people resolve workplace conflict. And we don't have time to look at all 7, so we're just going to focus on this first one, which is identifying the story you've got going on. So there's 2 types of stories you can tell yourself. One story puts a figurative halo over your head and enables you to justify to yourself why you have behaved poorly and makes you look like the innocent or injured party. The second type of story is one you tell yourself about others. This story causes you to place figurative devil horns on the heads of others. You begin to negatively label them. This puts you in a downward spiral of ill feeling and lousy temper towards them. So I wanted to give you a few examples that helps you to understand what this might look like. So the first one is the situation is someone lets you down and it's not the first time. So the story you tell yourself is, God, they're irresponsible and unreliable. However, if you let someone down and it's not the first time, the story you tell yourself is, it's because I'm overworked. Can you see how in the first scenario where someone else lets you down and it's not the first time, you label and blame? Whereas in the second scenario where it's you letting someone else down and it's not the first time, you justify it. Well, let's have a look at a few more examples. Someone cuts you off while driving. The story you tell yourself, they are rude, aggressive, and inconsiderate. If you cut someone off while you're driving, it's because I'm in a hurry and if I don't catch these lights, I'll miss my doctor's appointment. What about the scenario? One of your peers whom you don't like buys the boss a birthday card. The story you tell yourself, it's because they are soft soaping the boss and try to weasel the way in for a promotion. When you buy the boss a birthday card, it's because I'm warm and caring. Someone flies into a rage at the post office clerk. The story you tell, they're bad-tempered. When you fly into a rage at the post office clerk, the story you tell is, it's because I'm tired and this is the 3rd time I've been here trying to resolve the problem. The post office keeps making the same mistake, which is costing you money. Now here's the important thing to underscore. Sometimes your stories are accurate, but more often than not, they are either inaccurate or incomplete or just completely wrong. The truth is often somewhere in between the story you've told yourself about why the other person is acting that way and the facts. Identifying your story is vital for 3 reasons. First, it ensures you don't overreact to a situation. Second, you open yourself up to the possibility of holding a healthy discussion rather than ambushing the other person with your emotions. And third, you begin to sift fact from story. So here's an exercise I suggest you use to start to sift story from fact. I want you to think of a conflict you have with someone at the moment. Then grab a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle of the page. In the left-hand column, write down all the stories you're telling yourself about the person, all the feelings, thoughts, judgments, labels, and conclusions that are running through your head. In the right-hand column, write down all the facts. Now, facts are observable, objective, and has specific actions and information. To differentiate between fact and story, keep this example in mind. The sky is blue is a fact. The sky is a beautiful colour is a story. So, just as an example, let's say you don't like your boss. Alright, so the story you're telling yourself is, she's rude, she doesn't value my opinion, I don't trust her, she's got a hidden agenda, she doesn't value what I do, she'd sell me up the river in a heartbeat, and it's not my job to try and find out why she doesn't like me, she's the boss. Okay, so what am I going to look at in terms of facts on the right hand side? Well, she doesn't acknowledge me when she walks past my desk. I haven't had any one-on-ones with her in the past month. Her diary is very full. She is being asked to juggle a lot of balls by senior management, and she's attended meetings I've run and asked detailed and insightful questions about the work we are doing. As you look at your list, you may find that the story you have been telling yourself is not fully supported by all the facts, that you have made many assumptions and interpretations about what the other person's behaviour might mean. In the link below the video, I've given you a link to the FAIR grid, which is a great tool to help you identify when you're making assumptions. Once you've sifted fact from story, next write down how your reactions, your actions or inactions might have contributed to the situation. This exercise is not designed to stop you from talking with the other person about the problems you're having with him or her. Its purpose is to help you wash down any overheated emotions you may have running riot through your body, to help you become a bit more objective about the situation. Then you're more likely to hold the conversation with less accusation and more curiosity. And I'm always recommending to my clients to come from a place of curiosity. Have you ever heard the saying, we judge others by their actions, but ourselves by our intentions? You don't honestly know what the other person's intentions are without asking. In the successful feedback training, you learn that your number one goal in any type of conflict is to discover the truth. Identifying your story is one positive step in enabling you to achieve this goal. And here's why being top-notch at handling the different types of conflict in the workplace is important. Because look, no matter the types of conflict, ignoring them and hoping they will go away is going to cost you, possibly cost you quite dearly. If you're a leader in the business, it is going to cost you in terms of wasted time listening to people's complaints, you complaining to others about how tough you've got it, which no leader worth his or her salt should ever do. Lost productivity as people spend more time worrying about the conflict than the organisational goals. Higher absenteeism, more health claims, people withdrawing emotionally, higher employee turnover, aggression, and at times even violence. And if you're involved in the conflict, you may feel emotions like discontent, miserableness, distress, frustration, and resentment. And moreover, here's why that's so significant to you. Generally, most people are not good at leaving these feelings of work at quitting time. They trundle along home with that tension and frustration. And as you and I both know, this often causes conflict and pressure on the home front as well. So in summary, Is it a luxury to spend money teaching people how to resolve conflict? Absolutely not. High performance organisations are very aware of the need to train people in the so-called soft skills. They spend significant portions of their budget on developing people's social skills. When you and your people learn and master the skills to deal with any type of conflict in the workplace, you will be far happier and far more productive. The beautiful thing is that this type of training is a gift that keeps on giving, not only in the workplace, but into the wider community. Sadly, most people never learn the art of resolving differences and turning them into effective conversations. This can trap them in a life of angst, negativity and bitterness. And I'm sure you want more for yourself and your team than that. We've been helping organisations shift.
So, has anyone got any feedback or ideas or anything they want to talk about that they learned in that little video? Were you all awake?
Self-explanatory, wasn't it?
Yeah. So it's just about, I think it comes back to communication once again, and how to effectively communicate with other people in the workplace. So common ineffective strategies to deal with workplace disputes include, so these ideas are not going to work for us. So avoidance, indirect communication in the form of complaints and or gossip, bartering, emotional reactions, righteousness, holding on to positions. So, and that lady talked a bit about that as well. So we need to address the problem in the workplace. So avoidance is not going to work. Gossip definitely isn't going to solve any problems there. Emotional reactions, so not having an outburst, maybe taking time to think about it, put some pros and cons on the bit of paper, what's in your head, what's other facts, what's actually happened before having a reaction, and holding on to positions just because you're in a different position or you're a leader of your team doesn't give you the right to speak down or cause conflict in the workplace. So to deal effectively with the issues, knowing what to say can be a challenge, and when you are concerned about a problem or issue, it can be helpful to restate the issues or problems as intended outcomes or solutions. So rather than triggering defensiveness, the conversation can be a collaboration focused on success. So it's just about getting all the facts first so that you can have that conversation. Realise that emotions are part of the workplace and that negative emotions can fuel the conflict. Acknowledge your emotion and then determine its source. Is it based on a bad experience or a past interaction that may be influencing the current situation? Or is it based on something you have no control over? Take the time to de-escalate before moving forward. So I think it comes back to acknowledging it first, acknowledging the relationship and what has occurred, and then being able to address it. Decide how to respond to a conflict situation. So most people remember how you respond to a situation rather than what happened. So if there is a conflict in your workplace and you've just flown off the handle and started yelling and carrying on like a crazy person to your employee, everyone's going to remember that incident at work that happened, rather than if you went home, had a think about it, came back the next day, had a coffee with the person and sat down and had the conversation and talked about it. No one's going to remember that, but they will remember the outburst that you had the day before if that's the way that you handled the situation. Or you often don't have control of many situations. You can choose to how you respond to others to help reduce work conflict and stress. By responding appropriately to a conflict situation, you take responsibility for your actions. So taking a moment to think before you act, and respecting others. Give yourself time to prepare. So you should address difficult issues after you've had time to organise your thoughts. Take the time to understand and be clear about what your real concerns are, and ask yourself, what is the underlying reason for the why behind what I want? So is it because you've had another bad encounter that's flowed on to something else with someone else? Is that actually that person's fault? Like, just making sure you're understanding the situation and why it has arisen. Listen, reflect and inquire. So do you have enough time to listen? Is the setting appropriate? So once again, not just flying off the handle at someone, maybe taking the time to walk up the road, have a coffee with them to talk about it. Make good eye contact and keep your facial and body expressions in check. So listening is hard when emotions are high, so make sure that you cool down first. Do not listen only to hear what you expect the other person to say or to confirm your viewpoint, and listen with an open mind. Help the other person feel heard, so emphasize. Ask open-ended questions to gather information. So don't go in with your ready to battle with your guard up, so always have your guard down and be mindful to listen to the other people. They may have valid reasons, but it may help you learn as to why the situation has occurred. Use I messages to express your concerns in a non-confrontational way, so focus on and clarify your issues, feelings or opinions. I feel frustrated when you come in late because I'm not able to end my shift on time, rather than you're always late. So always giving backup supporting information as to why you're feeling that way. So iMessages place the responsibility on you and include 3 components. So it includes your personal reaction and feeling, a description of the situation, action, and the impact or consequence from your perspective. So you messages focuses the blame on the other person, and they are likely to elect a negative or defensive response. So you want to break down the negative reactions. You want to try and sit there and talk about it reasonably. Frame the issue in terms of interest. So frame the discussion on being direct about your interests. So instead of beating around the bush, talk about your issue so that you can resolve it. Ask powerful questions to better define the problem for the two of you to address together. The best questions are open-ended questions rather than questions that require a yes or no, or a reply or a short answer. So people who are already defensive, if you're asking short questions, then you are going to get a yes or a no. You want to try and engage them in some conversation so that you can actually find out why the situation has occurred. Good questions include what would that look like, or how would that work in that situation, or how do you want to move forward? So giving them the option to hear their opinions. Focus on what you can change, which is the future. So discussion about the past and or arguing about examples may be necessary for understanding, but is not to conceive the other person that you're right or to defend yourself. So focus on how you can both work more productively in the future. So this training is to help you when you're in the workplace. If there is a issue or problem or conflict in the workplace, how can you focus on that? You need to resolve it, you need to address it, you need to find a solution, but you also need to move forward. There's no point dwelling on the future. We saw in the first session that good working relationships mean that you're more productive, you're more initiative at work. There's no point going to work and being upset with the other people all the time. It's not a happy place to be. So we need to recognise that other viewpoints are possible and likely. So although you feel differently about the situation, the other person's feelings are real and legitimate to them. So we can't take away, people are allowed to feel the way they feel. We have to accept that, but agree to disagree and then move on with the situation. Denying their existence is likely to escalate the situation. So you're going to enhance them feeling more upset. It's difficult to find solutions without agreement on the problem. And if you do not understand the other person's viewpoint, you run the risk of not solving the right problem, which could make the conflict worse. So it's really important to identify why the problem arose in the first place, and then how you're going to move forward to fix it. Brainstorm creative options. So by involving the other person in resolving the conflict, you gain his or her commitment and develop a stronger working relationship. And being open-minded to solutions expands the universe that can bring you relief. So there are this is a 5-step approach to solving difficulties at work. So number 1 is recognise that there is a problem. So I think that's self-explanatory, that there's a conflict, that you recognise there is a problem. Don't brush it under the rug. Consider what needs to happen to fix the problem. You then need to ask someone to help you with a solution if you're not sure on how to resolve it yourself. Carry out the solution as a team and talk about what went wrong and what could be done to make sure it does not happen again. So does anyone have any ideas or any thoughts? They agree with that? They don't agree with that? No? Nothing?
5 good points there.
Yes. I think if you remember anything, if you can remember the 5 steps, then if you put that in place in a workplace environment, then you're going to go a long way to resolving anything. So, we've got a group activity, and it is an open discussion. So, Cheryl is an administrative assistant in a large academic department. Her supervisor, Tom, the assistant to the department head, gave her a document to complete at 4:30 p.m. Cheryl normally leaves work at 5. The next morning she discovered that she had forgotten to include a key paragraph in the document. Her supervisor, Tom, stands in front of her desk and proclaims loudly, "How could you be so stupid? Don't you have any sense? Don't you read the work you are doing? Why are you so slow?" Cheryl is visibly upset and seems embarrassed because everyone in the office has observed his interaction. So, what are the circumstances? What are the issues? So, who wants to identify them initially? So, what happened?
She forgot a paragraph out of the document.
And what's the issue that's been caused?
The boss wasn't happy.
Yeah.
And what was the timing involved? I missed that.
Oh, he gave her the document to prepare at 4:30, and she leaves work at 5. And so
Not enough time.
she got it done, but not to a good standard
Not enough time to do it.
to
And
do it.
then
So he should have come a bit earlier. Not just give a half hour to do that.
Yeah.
He
So-
should have thought a bit further ahead and knows that she leaves at 5.
You need more time to
Yeah.
prepare. Is this harassment or discrimination? Why would it be, or why wouldn't it be?
it could be a bit of harassment because he
Cool,
knows
it's
she can't
true.
finish it in time, and he's trying to push her to put in more time than she's getting paid for.
And he called her stupid. Like
Yeah,
that's,
never do
That's
that.
harassment,
that,
isn't
yeah,
it?
that's harassment.
And I think doing it in a public environment as well. If you're not performing to where your boss is expecting you
Should
to
call
perform,
out.
it should be in a private meeting
Yeah.
room where
Yeah.
the discussion takes place, not on a public floor for others to see. Should anything be done, or what should be done? What would your ideas be?
Re-educate the boss.
It's a very good
Come on, if
idea.
he's got enough time, if he gives her enough time to do a job,
She could do it.
she doesn't have enough time to do a job, then he needs re-education. Send him to China.
What about Cheryl? If you were Cheryl, what would you do?
I'll be peed off.
Ask for more time to do a job.
Get him to
properly.
stick the job up his ass.
But he should know that she leaves
Yeah.
at 5 o'clock, and he would have known how much detail was involved. So it's up to him to allow more time for her.
Yeah.
Maybe he thought she should have been able to do it in half an hour.
Yeah.
What he thought were two different things. isn't
Maybe
it?
he thought I could do it in half an hour, surely she could do it.
Well, one of them should explain to the other whether they can or they can't.
It's communication, isn't
Yeah,
it?
Yeah.
communication.
I think if I was Cheryl, I'd be calling a meeting with my boss Ian, Tom,
Tom.
whatever his name is, Tom, in a private room and just saying I felt uncomfortable and I felt that half an hour wasn't a reasonable time frame that you gave me to prepare the reports. So she's had an opportunity to explain her concerns, and then her concern of obviously being embarrassed on the, in front of all her employees of the way that he treated her. And
Well, that's the main thing.
yeah,
Should not be what, abused or in front of other people,
no, it's not okay.
and he is abused.
It is. So should this behaviour be reported, and how should the matter be addressed?
No, she could explain to him what she feels first, then report if have to be.
Can you go to human resources and say something?
Yeah,
Because she's not happy.
no.
Yeah, but if she can
But he'll do it
discuss it,
again.
if she can discuss it with him to make him understand how she feels.
First, yeah.
Because otherwise you put it to human resources and then that creates a bigger problem because it's straight away they're being involved
But she
with
might
it as
feel
well.
comfortable going
Whereas
to
she
him.
might have felt talking to him would be better.
And sometimes they let you take someone with you. in those
That's a good
situations,
idea.
If you need someone.
Support or someone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You
you
need-
could take your
If
HR
you're making a
manager.
complaint, you need confirmation,
Yeah,
somebody with you.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good that, to discuss it with Tom, so that he understands the way he made her feel.
That's
And
first
if,
things.
and the expectations aren't clear, because obviously his expectations of what she can achieve and hers are on two different pages, so they need to talk about that to get on the same page. And then his behaviour obviously is not appropriate, so that needs to be addressed with him, that the way he made her feel was not okay. And then if need be, report it to our HR department. But
I still think the first thing is she's got to explain to him how she felt, and he's got to explain to her
yeah,
that you should have been able to do that in that time.
that's right.
But at the same token, the third one's out the window.
Yeah.
You never talk down to people
No.
in company.
Because maybe what she produced for him, or what he actually wanted, was a half-hour job, but what she did was, you know, something
Do something
else.
better.
Yeah. So the
You see, that
clarification.
goes back to what you were saying about somebody spent a long time doing some sort of report, and she objected to him. But then again, he could say, well, the report was great, but it was so good that it obviously pointed out the bits that were wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously the expectations weren't clear. There was two different expectations there. So both parties didn't know what was meant to occur. So in summary today, what we've learned, or this second session, deal effectively with issues, problems and conflict. So we've talked about respecting differences in relationship development. So we have to have mutual respect between everyone. We need to have trust, we need to have very good communication skills, understanding and honesty in a workplace. Communicate within a work group with linguistic or cultural differences. So understanding that all cultures are different and everyone is different. Effective communication once again, and being understanding, so being open and not narrow-minded in regards to different cultures that we encounter in the workplace. And identifying issues, so we know how to, we've identified issues within the workplace, and we've talked about communication breakdown and problem solving. So yeah, understanding on what's occurred, what we need to do to resolve it. Dealing with issues, problems and conflicts. So we've learned to listen, we then reflect, inquire and problem solve rather than flying off the handle. And seek assistance from work group members when required. So once we've identified a problem, we can consider what needs to happen to fix the problem. We can ask someone to help us with a solution and carry out the solution as a team. So I think like what we just talked about, she identified something, she's going to go to Tom and talk about it, but then if she needs some help, she can go to a HR manager and ask for support from a different department. So it's just about making sure that you're identifying and you know the process of what to follow to ensure that you get the right result from what you're after. So we're going to fill out some feedback forms. I know you love doing it. You don't need to put your names on it, just tick some boxes. What's coming up next? So if you were lucky enough to stay for the last session, you would get to do a recap of the whole day's work. We will recap the day's sessions. We will talk about what you've learned. We will talk about topics that you found interesting, and we'll go over some fun facts.
What's
So-
the fun facts?
Oh, there's lots of fun facts.